getting a few things situated, so hang on. All right, Kevin, you're up. Kevin?
We lost Kevin. Kevin, you there, buddy?
Casey, take it
You know
over.
what? We'll just go ahead and get going here. We'll wait for Kevin. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's special presentation. We have an exceptional speaker tonight from the great northern wilderness. Martha Van Berkel has been a friend of mine for years, very well known as a schema expert. She's going to be speaking tonight on the topic of state of schema markup in 2023. Martha is the co-founder and CEO of Schema App. It's an end-to-end enterprise schema markup solution. She's a well-known thought leader in schema application and schema markup. She has spoken all around the world. She spoke at State of Search back in 2017. It was one of the first times she spoke in North America, and so we're really very happy to have her back. She's a good personal friend of mine. One of the things you might know about Martha is that she is a competitive rower. Now, she won't say competitive, but she really is. She has in Canada, they have these little landlocked bodies of water. I think that they refer to them as lakes, but they're not really. They're more like ponds. But she has been spending a lot of her time improving her rowing expertise, and we're excited to get her down here in North America and have her give us some lessons. But when she is not managing with her husband, Schema App. She is the mother of, I believe she says, 2 energetic kids, but I believe you said that at many times it's more like 5. Is that right? You and your husband play zone defense now on the kids. Is that how it works, Martha?
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. But she's got a fantastic presentation. So without any further ado, Martha, please take it away.
Amazing. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm super, super jazzed to be here. And like Casey shared, it was one of my very first conferences at State of Search. So love coming back and seeing the whole community here. So today we're going to talk about the state of schema markup. And please don't be shy with questions or comments sort of as we go through. I want to hear them. What I'll do is I can't see all of you or the questions as I share. So Casey, I'll look for you to interrupt me if there's something that comes up that we want to jump into. Otherwise, let's jump in. I always like to introduce myself with my knowledge graph using schema markup, of course. So like Casey said, I am one of the founders and the CEO of Schema App. And I actually grew up and studied engineering. So I do have a technical background. So if you have technical questions, let's talk about them. It's all good. I also had the chance to go to Boston, not for rowing, Casey, but to study strategy and innovation at MIT. And I grew up in enterprise. So if any of you are in enterprise and work for a large organization, all good. I've been there. I spent 14 years at Cisco doing all kinds of entrepreneurial work, product management, and sort of actually looking at sort of how the support website could support the global teams. I am Canadian, so I will say A. And I used to own a 1965 Austin Healey Sprite, which is pictured right there. And my actual car was in the movie called Losing Chase that Kevin Bacon directed.
Martha, I'm going to interrupt you. There we go. Okay, we must be having a lag issue because it's your shared screen wasn't coming in. So
can you see me now?
Well, we can see the screen, but you froze. We can hear your voice, but it's a little pixelated.
All right. Well, why don't I'll try to keep going. I'm on my landline.
Yeah, just keep going and we'll work it out.
All right. Sorry about that. That stinks.
That's okay. It's not you.
Well, maybe this is when I gotta play zone defense. I'm gonna totally text my kids upstairs and tell them to stop watching television. Turn off TV. Everyone laughing.
They're taking up your bandwidth. From what I understand, isn't it true that all Canadians have one line, so you have to call your neighbors to make sure that you have enough?
No,
Is
I
that
live
not
in
true?
like a big city. No, absolutely not.
Oh, okay.
The
I thought it was
party
all
line though did
villages.
exist at one point. Yes, yes, yes. All right. So where I was at, and if you can still hear me, is the reason I introduced myself this way is because I'm explaining sort of the relationship between me and other things in the world, which is actually what we're doing when we use schema markup. And I'm going to talk today a lot about connected schema markup or nested schema markup or building a knowledge graph. And it's become even more pertinent that we talk about this with all the AI stuff going on. And so whenever we sort of go through it, I'll refer back to here as sort of a reference to say, we're going back to like kind of like my intro slide when we're sort of like starting with not just me, but your organization when we talk about schema markup on your site. All right, we're doing okay? Everyone with me?
Yeah, well, you're there. It's blurry, but just keep talking.
Blurry.
Your audio is great, but your video is.
All right, everyone should just close their eyes. I'm going to pretend we're in a schema markup meditation and I'll talk you through it.
Yeah, I just talked through it.
Amazing. So we're going to talk a little bit tonight about just schema markup 101. I want to make sure we're all on the same page as to sort of like what we're talking about here. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened in 2022 and sort of where we see it going. So just kind of a little bit of that state of schema markup. Then I want to talk you through AI.
Oh my goodness. This is crazy stuff. Oh, I just lost her.
Did we lose her? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
Isn't this special, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so Casey, if you can connect with her and bring her back in, tell her we just lost her. She just disappeared. We appreciate your patience with us. I love technology. I just love technology. Kevin, why don't we chat for a few minutes and tell people about State of Search, DFW, SEM, as well as what's coming up?
Oh, yeah. Well, if you want, I can do the intro.
Yeah, go for it.
I froze up during mine when it was my moment. So, all right. Am I coming through? I mean, is it showing? All right, perfect. All right. And so I'm Kevin Adams, president of State of Search by DFW SEM. Welcome, everyone. And we've been here for 19 years, since 2004, February, I believe. Of course, I said I'm president. Vice President is Tim Shane. Treasurer is Mike Stewart. Julie Jones is secretary and former past president. VP of State of Search and Hospitality is Chris O'Connor. VP of Membership and Registration is Casey Markey. VP of Sponsorship is Shelley Ellis. VP of Communications, Bill Allen. And board at large members are Rachel Black, Jenna Williams, and Jeff Ferguson. If you want to participate in a committee with us, you can email us membership@dfwsem.org. So State of Search, we're on is, and you can buy tickets on the State of Search website, stateofsearch.org. November 13th and 14th this year. Virtual ticket prices will be $197. In-person ticket prices are $397. And we currently have an early bird special, I believe, $50 off. Is that right, Chris? Oh, yeah, it's right at the bottom. Oh, never mind. I answered my own question. The code is, I don't believe you'll need to enter the code, but write it down. It's early SOS 23. I believe we removed the code necessity, but check that. So membership, these are, this slide needs to be removed. We are now fully free. By the way, I need to mention, I'm going to send out an email to anyone who has paid. for membership. You're going to get a discount on State of Search for your tickets for the prorated amount for the rest of the year. I don't want anyone feeling like they were cheated now that we're 100% free for the meetings. The conference, of course, won't. And we'd love you to fill out a survey after the meeting. dfwsem.org/virtual-meeting-survey. And questions, put them in the chat. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm going to turn that off for right now. Actually, I wanted to let you all know that we've found a location for State of Search. State of Search is going to be in Grapevine this year at the Grapevine Conference Center. It's a great location. It's close to the airport, and it's close to all the restaurants. It's close to a lot of hotels to stay at. Actually, you could walk through parking lots to get there. I'm really, really excited about having it in Grapevine because it's such a great city and there's lots of things to do. It can be a destination for you to come to. And I'm really excited that a lot of things are happening. And I know Kevin gave you a link. Actually, all you have to do is go to stateofsearch.org and go to register. And actually, our early bird special through May 15th is $100 off. Regularly, it's $397 and it's $297. So you're saving $100 as long as you pay for it before May 15th. After that, the price will go back up to $397. So we're having a great early bird special. Anyways, I want to make sure that you guys all knew that and that Martha is back. So we're going to let her come back and present. We're so sorry, Martha. I don't know what happened.
Oh man, that's all right. Well,
love technology, right?
Yeah, it's all good. My internet's good here, so I've kicked the kids off. Like, you're not doing anything, so we'll see
it
how
may
we
not
do.
have been you,
And I do
may
have
have
it
been me, but
so if it gets blurry again.
Yeah, just do what you can. If worst case scenario, we'll just upload your slides after.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a connectivity issue going, and we don't think it's at your end.
Yeah, it
So
could
we'll
be
have to
on my
figure it
end.
out.
I'm not sure, but
yeah.
Let's see.
All right.
It's lagging.
So we talked about schema markup, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right.
it should show up here in a minute.
All right. And if we want, I can just stop sharing and I can just talk through it. That's also happy if people want to do that. I can send you the slides. So schema markup basically is the language of search engines. And most of the reason why we do it with our clients these days is to make sure that we get these really rich results. So when my mother asks me what I do, it's, we add additional information in the SERP so that we can really, really engage those users, no matter what type of business you're in. And so whether you are in a local business or a large enterprise in healthcare, in e-commerce, there's lots and lots of opportunities for you to stand out in search. And what's really cool is, again, there's now some newer use cases coming out specifically around how, when you do this properly, it'll also sort of help prepare your organization, for this kind of changes coming around AI. Now, I always like to talk about the schema markup process, and maybe I'll get people who are chatting, because there is a chat in here. How many people today do schema markup? Maybe if you can put in the chat, yes, like you do schema markup. Anyone out there? Yes, I do schema markup. No.
I sent the question out. We'll see who answers.
All right. Okay. So if you're doing schema markup, you've done elements of the schema markup process. And the schema markup process really starts with strategy. We're going to talk a lot about strategy today around, like, how do you understand, like, what is the page and what should you optimize it for? Really kind of identifying also how it ties to the business goals. The second is around authoring. So this is often, like, people talk about writing JSON LD or sort of creating code, generating code. We call this authoring because ideally you're generating code, because then it's way less likely that you'll have mistakes in it. And then deployment, because Google requires it today to be on your site. Maintenance, which is then when you're keeping it up to date. And some people may say, like, oh, but my pages don't change much. That is true. Although, just this week we saw Google actually update their documentation on some of the e-commerce and product requirements, specifically around clothing. There is sort of a need to maintain it, especially if you're in a mid to large organization or you're collaborating with others in order to generate content. And so in that case, like, that maintenance step is so important. Oh, yeah, here I go. Answers. Yes, want to start, get started. Amazing. Okay. And then the last piece is measurement. One of the things that I love about schema markup in the SEO space is it is measurable. So while other things like all those that other work that you do is really hard to attribute directly to, let's say, increasing the speed of the site or, creating, updating really good content or doing backlinks with schema markup, we can correlate clicks directly to that work. And I love that because then when you're trying to get budget for it, it's easier to show the ROI. But there are some challenges doing it. And the challenge is, so some people say, yes, we do it every day. Maybe I'll ask Garrett and Jenna and some of the others, like, what are some of those challenges? So often organizations run into challenges around lack of expertise. We're going to help move that needle up today, kind of do some education, sometimes using the right tools or having the right ability of IT available to get things done. These challenges, are easy to overcome sort of, again, once you have that strategy and you can show the ROI. And so I'm going to try to give you some things today that sort of will help you sort of overcome some of these before you kind of get into that place. All right, so let's jump in a little bit to the state of search, the state of schema markup. I want to check in with everybody. Casey, how are we doing on people being able to hear me?
People can hear you just fine, and good news, we can actually see the slides. So it's
Way to
working.
go, Restream. Rock
Yeah,
and
so keep
roll.
going, keep going. You're good to go.
Okay, cool. So I want to talk a little bit about 2022, mostly because there were some pretty significant changes that still impact you today. And the first one was in June. So in June of last year, oh my goodness, coming on almost a year, we actually saw a pretty big change in how Google handled video. And so historically, like you could get a lot of video rich results in search. And after June, they pretty much took them away for desktop to where, most of our clients were only getting clicks specifically when it came to mobile. So video is still a really good rich result, but just know that like on desktop, we don't see it performing since June. And this is a graph. So I'm going to share a couple graphs that are sort of industry data from all of our clients showing trends and clicks. Because what we want to do is look at when we see a big change from Google, do we actually see like clicks drop off? And so you can see in here, they're actually growing. So even though they're not being awarded on desktop as often, we're still seeing it awarded a lot. So video is a great sort of rich result to go after. FAQs are another one that I often get asked. And I feel like over the many, many years, we've talked about zero click search with FAQs or not getting people into your site. Good news, FAQ results are also very healthy. And we're just about to release our next quarter report on this. They're actually looking like they're continuing at this, like I'll say, like elevated level. And this is clicks from FAQs. And FAQs are great. They're a great way that you can kind of nest them in almost anything. So if ever you're looking at a page and you're like, I can't get a rich result for this, good news, you can probably get FAQs. And I'll show you how to sort of nest that properly. And then the other piece that was really interesting was a really big shift in focus on product search results. And so for those of you that work in e-commerce, there's sort of new rich results that came out at the end of last year that sort of give you the same rich results as Merchant Center. And this is to me really exciting. Why? Because it means that the teams at Google are actually talking to one another. And so, I think we'll see more of these type of things where, if you're doing kind of a Merchant Center feed and you're doing schema markup, that the different teams are going to use it. And what do I mean by different teams? So I'm talking about sort of like the merchant team, the ad teams, the teams that are doing display ads. Where I think we're going to start seeing sort of some of the features kind of start crossing. And we started seeing this at the end of last year. And like I mentioned earlier, there's a new schema markup property that was added to the documentation in the last month that also allows you with clothing now to say sort of, is it specifically targeted for a specific gender? And so they're adding, continuing to add. And like I said, most of the sort of updates I'm seeing from Google since sort of November, December is in the product area. So in the e-commerce space. And so when we step back and we say like, well, what rich results are really performing? And I'll say for mid to large enterprise, that's where my data sort of represents the majority of it. You can see FAQ rich results, video rich results, product results, and review snippets are where we're seeing the majority of the clicks being rewarded across our clients. We are seeing growing results in the how-to area, but that's relatively new. So next in the next month, We'll actually be releasing our latest updates sort of on the industry rich results we do it on a quarterly basis, kind of trying to make sure that you understand sort of like, is this something you should continue to invest in? Which ones are performing, which ones are we seeing sort of really have that return on investment? All right, so that's we hear you. Thanks, Bill. Good to hear from you. Thanks for joining. Okay, we're going to talk about AI knowledge graphs. I hope everyone has had dinner or at least a couple coffees because we're going to talk a little bit about definitions of some language that is being tossed around a lot these days, especially sort of with ChatGPT. And I'm going to share some language definitions that are then going to help explain some of what we're hearing from Google around schema markup and then also what we're hearing from Bing. And so I'm going to go slowly. I'm going to pretend you're in front of me nodding, letting me know that you understand. So we're going to start with the word semantics. And I happen to be married to a guy who has a master's in semantic technology. So I feel like on my third date, I was like quizzed on this. But semantics is really the term for the study of language and how it expresses meaning, and the rules it must abide in order to convey this meaning. Okay, so the words I always pull out of this is like kind of language and meaning. All right. So that's what semantics is. And so when we think about schema markup, it's actually using language. So the schema.org vocabulary that was brought out in 2011 by Google, Yahoo, and Bing and Yandex is actually the language of search engines. It's actually what we use in order to explain the meaning of a page. Everyone still with me? Okay, so then when we talk about semantic technology, of which Schema app uses semantic technology, it's basically tools that help articulate the meaning and relationships between things. Okay, so we have this vocabulary of the search engines, and we're going to use semantic technology in order to like explain or, I often simplify it to like translate it, right? And not just translate exactly what it is, but the meaning and relationships. Okay, remember I said I was going to say like, let's remember my introduction slide. Remember I was explaining not just like who I was, but my relationships to other things in the world, like MIT, Schema app, etc. So that's sort of the same thing, right? So we're talking about like the meaning and relationships. And then a knowledge graph, which is another word that we often use and you're going to hear me use, is basically when all those things are together. So when I introduced myself, I was saying like, this is my knowledge graph. When you do proper schema markup on your website using a standardized vocabulary called schema.org, you're actually building a knowledge graph, which is explaining the relationships between things in your business about your products, the people, your webinars, your content, the topics, etc. Okay, so you're like, thanks, Martha, for the education. I came here to learn about schema markup and not go back to University 101. But this is so important. It's actually like so, 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 so important with the advent of ChatGPT and the new Bing. Because when schema markup builds knowledge graphs, it actually helps those machines understand and actually trains them. So let's kind of go back and like say, okay, sure, Martha, let's like see how this works. So you have data on your website, right? We have images, we have headlines, we have all these things. Okay, so it's like really set up for humans to read. Then we're going to use schema.org to define the content on your site. And often people think of this as a page, right? So I'm going to describe the product and all the product attributes. I'm going to describe my blog and all the blog attributes. I'm going to actually go over here now and I'm going to talk about, maybe my services, and I'm going to have some FAQs on there. And these are all sort of like definitions of those specific things, those specific pages, or we call them entities on the site, using this standard vocabulary. But where it becomes really powerful is when you connect the dots. So when we explain that the product actually is, ties with the service or is offered by the organization, or that, this person on the site is the CEO of this organization or the creator, the inventor of this such product. And it's when we connect these things that things have even more meaning. Now, at Schema Up, we're like really, we take this to the nth degree to where I would say like our company's purpose is to build meaningful connections so people and things are understood. And we'll even go as far as like making sure we're trying to find connections even amongst all of us, right? Prior to this call, as we were preparing, we were talking about rowing, right? And we all had a connection or a different connection to rowing. Or I was sharing about sort of my meaningful connection to state of search, right? So, our brains and humans think like this naturally, right? And so now we're actually trying to do that in the content so that the machines can infer and sort of do that thinking as well. And so why are knowledge graphs important? Okay, so we were having a bit of a laugh. We're like, let's ask ChatGPT why knowledge graphs are important. So this is actually ChatGPT's answer, again, validated by the masters of semantic technology who works in this every day. And so why do we care? So the first is semantic search and analysis. So basically, when you have a knowledge graph, search engines, and I'm talking not just like Google search engines, but if you actually go and look into sort of what's under sort of on-site search engines, this is a lot of it as well, right? Like that's where you're going to see semantics. So understanding analysis, and part of it, the ability it can do that is because it's using a common vocabulary. The second reason why it's important is because it actually allows machine learning and artificial intelligence to extract insights. It's my like big pause to be like, yeah. And then the last piece in integration and interoperability. And this is really important. This is another area we like to nerd out at Schema App on, because if you think about it, it's like right now we're trying to use schema.org to articulate the meaning and connections amongst everything on your website, but your website is only a portion of your organization's data. Like what if you could actually connect all of that? Like then what could you query? And so we're doing some R&D about like moving actually all of our customer data and all of our business data into a knowledge graph so that we can start querying it in different way and get insights. And that's called data-centric architecture. It's kind of I'll say like it's not new, but it's like more up and coming as we see sort of more need for sort of this type of work. So why are knowledge graphs important? And maybe I'll just cross out knowledge graphs and say, why is schema markup important? Because this is the foundation to so many more things. This is when I like need to see the room. Okay, booyah, drop the mic, exciting. Some reactions here in the chat.
Yeah, woo!
All right. So I also like to take this back. Thank you, Casey. I like to take this back to like how Google's talking about this, because it's important also like like the role of the person who's talking about these different things. So one of the questions that came up, this was January this year, was like, I'm going to just summarize this so you don't have to read it, is like, should I connect my schema markup? And John Mueller, who we all know is this like amazing spokesperson for Google, is like, really, it's up to you, right? Like, we'll kind of, pretty much like focus on rich results. That's sort of like my interpretation of his piece. But then on the same chat in Mastodon, Ryan Levering speaks up. Now, Ryan Levering is the current, I'll say, champion of structured data. He's also like a distinguished engineer at Google. He's who we get to connect with on a regular basis as sort of like people who are really driving adoption of schema markup. And his line in this, he said other things, but his like key line that I want you to take away is like, over time, richer, correct semantics will favor more connected graphs. Okay, so this is why I like explained that language before I tried to explain what Ryan was saying. So he's basically saying correct relationships and meaning, right, will favor more connected graphs, or we'll say schema markup, where you're actually like connecting the dots. Okay, interesting, right? Then I'm at PubCon and Fabrice Cannell from Bing is talking. And he talked about like many things that SEOs could do, making their site more indexable, like making sure it knows when things are up to date. But then he also wrote, and the two bullets are off his slide, write great content annotated with schema markup. And he said customer and content quality come first. And then he used the word, use semantic markup to convey information about the page. Semantic markup, semantics, connected graphs. I think they're telling us something. Okay, so let's get to the practical part of my presentation now. Okay, so do you believe me that like we have to do this right? This is what I pitched in 2017 and no one believed me. Okay, maybe a couple people believed me. But like the advent is now. Like I need to ensure that all of you understand how to create connected schema markup. Okay, amazing. Thank you, State of Search Conference. Joining from the RV. Thank you, Tim. Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about ways we can connect. And I'm going to give you a detailed example, and I'm going to finish off with some best practices. So different ways to connect. You can connect content across your web pages. This is like schema markup version of linking, right? And then we also can connect the schema markup with entities or things defined elsewhere, including Wikipedia. Okay. we should do both. So let's go through an example because I think this like kind of helps explain it. We do a lot of work in healthcare. Baptist Jacks is, I won't say a favorite client, but an amazing client of ours. I can't pick favorites, just like my children. And you can see here, like this is an amazing rich result. They're getting a rating rich result. They're getting FAQs. Alan Cleland is probably getting an amazing amount of appointments, right? And so what we want to do is actually like look at like how do we get that result? How would we actually think through doing the schema markup? How would we think through that first step towards building knowledge graphs? And so what we're going to look at is we're going to look at connecting things like connecting types under the main type. So on this one, it's a physician who has an aggregate rating and an FAQ page, like FAQ page, which is like questions and answers. It's how you articulate sort of the FAQs on here. But the page is about a physician. So I don't want to do schema markup where it's like physician schema markup, aggregate rating schema markup, and then FAQ separate. No, like they're all about the physician. So we want to make sure that's really clear. And then we also want to make sure we sort of are using definitions. So here's another example, Emily Schroeder, who's an internal medicine doctor. So again, like I said, it's a physician, right? So we're going to articulate using, this is the schema markup type, physician. And I really suggest if you don't know your schema.org types off by heart, I've been doing this way too long, go to schema.org and have a look and read the definitions. And the reason I say that is sometimes like I go back and read them because I'm like, I was doing, I was looking at a new company and they're in pest control. And I was like, well, what is pest control in a local business? And it actually fits under home and construction because it's a business that does services around the home, which is what I wouldn't have picked without reading the definition. Physician is actually a local business. It's a type of local business, even though it's also a person. So you can multi-type here. But what we want to really do is then say like it's a physician and then what are the things about it? And for those of you that are new to schema markup, these would be called properties. So we would say what the URL is, what the name is, telephone, etc. Okay, so that one's sort of like starting. But then I have these other kind of pieces of information. And the stars and the FAQ here are what are actually going to make you eligible to get a rich result. Remember those really kind of standout results in the search. And so what we want to do is basically figure out how do we sort of, we'll use the word nest or connect these FAQ pages, to Emily Schroeder, the physician. And I'm going to give you a tool that helps you do this as well. That's free and available on our site. And so you can see there's this great connector called subject of. It allows me to put the FAQ page below it. And so it's really clear here is that the FAQ is the subject of the physician. Yeah, good call out, Doc, that like some of the definitions are counterintuitive. I agree. So read the definitions. Like, don't be afraid to just like go back to schema.org and read the definitions as you try to figure it out. There's also definitions on all of these properties. So if you're not sure exactly like what you should put there, there's good examples. And I would say like the schema.org documentation is very thorough in comparison to sort of like I'll say the more summary information that you see on the Google documentation. And Casey and team, I'll make sure I send sort of the links to those things so that people know what I'm talking about. The other thing you want to do is make sure you're always connecting back to the organization. And this is like, I'll say one of my pet peeves around schema markup. I've historically been known to say islands of schema markup. Like, remember my introduction slide, like that middle piece was me. Like we want to kind of keep connecting it also back to the organization. And so in this case, like parent organization allows us to tie it back, in this case, to Washington Health. And finding these connections can be complicated. So we actually have a free tool. So if you go to schemaapp.com and go to the bottom footer, there's a list of free tools there. I'm going to mention two of them here. So one is the Schema Paths tool. And actually, my co-founder built this when he was first doing schema markup way back in 2014, because it's sometimes hard to figure out like, how am I going to connect and nest these things? And so what you can do in the Schema Paths tool is you can pick the things you're trying to connect. So here it was medical clinic and physician. You can connect anything. I think one of my data searches, I used a volcano and a gas station just to be funny. But if you say click paths, it'll then tell you like which properties are expecting that thing that you're trying to connect. So medical clinic, has founding locations, service area, has POS, like none of those really make sense. And so it makes more sense to do it the reverse way and say, well, the physician, has or is like is part of the organization, medical clinic. So this is a great tool, Schema Pass. I still use it sort of when I'm doing schema markup to make sure I have it. Okay, there's a question here. Let's go to questions. What if we pick the wrong type? Can it be detrimental to the website? I think if you're doing your best, you'll probably be close. The piece that you want to do is try to be as specific as possible. So local business is a great example. So I think I'm sharing my tab. I'm a little scared to change my tab just because of the like content pieces. But if you go to schema.org and you go to local business and then you actually scroll to the bottom, there's a huge long list of different types of local business. And so in that case, like I don't think you get penalized if you used just local business. But if again you're a home and construction business or you're a more specific type of business, it's better to be more specific, right? Like then you're being more clear. And I think this plays, there's actually a really interesting presentation by Eric Enge at PubCon where he was talking about, like a lot of clicks come from like the long tail. Well, the long tail is very specific queries. And so I always think about like using really specific schema markup is helping you, be really specific as to like that key piece. Now, you do have to make sure you're following the guidelines. So if you put schema markup on and it like that content doesn't exist on the page, that is where you'll likely, I won't say get in trouble, but you won't get the reward of the rich result that you want to see. That isn't like, I would say like the thing that Google is checking is that they want to see, they call it schema drift, is like if the schema markup on the page doesn't represent sort of what's in the schema markup code. It's like kind of like keyword stuffing in schema markup. It's like rich result stuffing. Then like that is something that they actively check. Oh, thank you for sharing the schema paths. That's great. Oh yeah, as a schema newbie, that would be helpful. Yes, happy to help. There's also our blog has lots of resources, especially if you're doing local business. There's a really good guide. There was one other question. Oh, Bill Allen was giving a great example. For example, product markup, ratings and review, product specific FAQ markup on all the product page, or picking or choosing based on one of these you might want to prioritize. Okay, so Bill's question is around like nesting, like should you nest multiple things? So in my example I have here, we are actually going for multiple schema markup types, like multiple rich results here. Often in some cases, like product, you'll sometimes get just the product, which is the price and availability. And then you can also get the review snippet, which is the ratings. And then we sometimes test to see if we can get the FAQ. We typically can get an FAQ on a category page in ecom, but we don't see it as often under the product. So those are things that you just need to test. So I would say like try different ones, see which one you're getting the higher click-through rate for. We often test pages like for an FAQ, or we'll also sort of nest and how to in the page and sort of see which ones. Usually one gets a much higher click-through rate, and then we sort of stick with that as a strategy for the page. All right, keep the good questions coming. Okay, so we talked about nesting, right? We want to kind of connect things under what the main topic of the page is. So I don't know, I was looking at a website today and the website had local business schema markup, breadcrumb markup, and then also product markup. So breadcrumbs I expect on every page, but it had product markup and local business markup. And so my question is like, well, what is the page actually about? When I looked at the page, it was actually like it was a service. And if you read the definition on schema.org of product, it's a product or service. So it's actually like an okay. I would double type it of service and product because then you can do service area. But like, it's not very specific. So ideally, like the local business would be who is offering that service or product and not be sort of its own thing on the page. Okay, everyone still with me?
Yes,
Casey,
ma'am.
we are playing the game of we're like having a drink every time we say schema, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Drink.
Yes, we
Like a
have
bottle
one
of
other
bourbon.
question in there. Which plugin you recommend for WordPress?
Well, the Schema app plugin, of course. So there's a free plugin from us that you can use. It'll do a lot of the basics. And then, it really depends on like all other things. I know some people don't like to have millions of plugins, like Yoast does a decent job on schema markup. It really depends on when you want to get into like the specifics, right? Because I've recently been spending some time looking at WordPress websites more often. So people I met at PubCon that I said I would take a look, and I'm really noticing that like there's broad strokes, like your blog postings are all good on a plugin like blog postings, but like you need to get more specific on some of your other pages. You need to talk about those products and services. You need to talk about the people. You need to talk about, what is the page about, than to have the FAQs. And I'm just seeing more and more like just a plain plugin where you're not actually doing some, I'll say customization, or I'll say configuration. So Schema app has like our editor. Rank Math does some stuff where you can configure some things. um, I would say like we're the two different plugin or companies that are like giving you the ability to get a scalpel out. I'll stay in my medical kind of piece to get really specific to do proper schema markup. And I'd say we're like one of the only companies that does semantic markup. Okay, enough about me. Okay, let's talk about Wikidata. So Wikidata and Wikipedia lookups are also great ways to sort of define definitions. Now, when I talk about this stuff, I like don't do the really obvious ones. Like, oh, I live in Texas, I'm going to define Texas. Like Google knows what Texas is. But I'm talking about like more things that are sort of like a little bit more nuanced. For example, we work with some very large B2B tech companies, and they were talking specifically about carbon footprint. And they actually, like their writers talk mostly about footprints, sort of in their copy. But so they wanted to be really articulate that it was like about carbon footprinting, like specifically in the tech space. And so that's like where this Wikidata and Wikipedia can be really helpful. Again, if you work in a really niche area of business, this is a great way to be articulate about what it's about. And then we have a free tool that's a Wikidata lookup. You can also use Google, but this will allow you to sort of actually pull out specifically the about. And Wikidata and Wikipedia are different. Wikidata, I think my example has the next one on it. No, let me go here. Wikidata will actually like give you a number. So you can see here, there's like a Q reference. This is good because it's actually like the definition of chronology without being sort of language specific or country specific. So it's like the most specific kind of definition of it. We also like to use these definitions from Google's knowledge graph, because then you're sort of saying like this is the entity in Google's knowledge graph that we're talking about. And so I like using this for about mentions, things here like we're talking about the medical specialty. And this is really taking that like next kind of step to really define again what that content's about. And again, I wouldn't put 10 or 20 of these, like one is probably like it should be something that's like really specific. And so like we do some work on this right now using natural language processing. Where we'll look at, a key paragraph that like maybe it's that intro paragraph or the executive summary, and then we'll actually pull out those key entities and then allow you sort of within our tool at scale to like nest them within the schema property. And the property is important. Why? Because again, we're going back to like defining the meaning and relationships between things, right? So again, I wouldn't worry about doing this type of defining with cities and states, but it's like especially around like really specific topics is really powerful. All right. So I'm almost wrapping up to some best practices. So again, why is this important? Because like when you're doing your schema markup, we're trying to go after rich results and we're doing this like really awesome SEO strategy, but we're also building knowledge graphs, which then allow us to gain insights. And frankly, the search engines, the chat GPTs, the other like AI models that are kind of pulling and consuming data, which can then deliver intelligence. And we sort of have a vision around sort of like if you do this properly, like the business can also gain insights. And then you can also sort of reuse your schema markup for this really powerful marketing data layer. And I would say, like with the conversations over the last couple of months, I'm starting to get validation that this is indeed true. So exciting times for SEOs for us to play like a really an even more strategic role within the organization. All right. Questions or comments? And then I did pull together a couple kind of final best practices. I think I have about 10 more minutes. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So Garrett had one. Well, I don't know if it's a question. Just like title and meta description, you may need to curate schema data fields.
Yeah. So one of the things like where we spend a lot of time with our customers is actually like coaching them on content on the page, because like we need that content in a specific way, right? In order for it to, I'll say like meet the guidelines and the meanings that we need within Google. So you're exactly right. So that work that we've done over the years, like getting people to do their meta tags and descriptions and so forth, I like content, and then structured content will go through the same maturing. Yep, you're absolutely right, Garrett. You just like nailed it. Bill Allen asked one more. Seeing foreign competitors using aggregate rating markup on product category pages, which is against the guidelines. I've reported it to Google, but is there any better action to take? I think actually like reporting it is the best. I don't see as many penalties as I saw like in like the 2018, 2019 time. And ratings actually were where I saw most of the penalties around schema markup come out. Um, I saw something today that like I was like, oh, that's interesting that they're getting rewarded that. So I'm like, I haven't seen quite as much sort of, I'll say, locking down or sort of follow through on the rating kind of bad use recently. So I don't have an answer for you. I can bring it up in my next conversation when we meet with Google and just ask like, are they still doing that? Is that still something that they're looking at? Someone else did a plugin for Rank Math. Yeah, we've heard some good things about sort of their work. Oh yeah, interesting. FAQ and category pages. Make sure those category pages are very specific and not sort of like very broad. Okay, schema markup best practices. These are some of my favorites because I spend all day sort of talking to people about like schema markup and where they should start. And the most important thing that you can do is right from the get-go is really to align the schema markup strategy, like what you're going to optimize and what rich results you're specifically going for, specifically to those business goals. And I know it sounds like it's like, of course, Martha, but I've seen like where even like do less because it's tied to a specific goal, and then make sure you can get a rich result. And the rich result's really important today. I say today because I think there'll be other ways that we can measure the value of like a knowledge graph, but the rich result really allows you to do that attribution to the goal. And we see that sort of when we can show the impressions, we can show the clicks, and we can show a higher click-through rate, everyone gets bought in and everyone gets excited. And in fact, you can actually like move the needle with regards to like content teams and other people helping you sort of achieve that goal or curate that content, to Garrett's point. And so some examples that like we often hear are sort of, we want to get more non-branded clicks. I heard this today on one of my sales calls. We need more leads, more conversions, more sales, right? That's probably another common one. And then the other one, I grew up in the support area at Cisco, is reducing cost of support, like or number of phone calls that you're getting, and technical documentation, like whether it be how to. I've also seen Q&A work very very well. So question and answer, rich result. These are great ways, I say, to wow your customer. And so I think I've recently been doing quite a lot of work with some companies who have, I'll say, like a really differentiated experience for their customers. And I'm so excited to work with them on bringing FAQs like right into the into the SERP, so that like they start experiencing that wow, or that customer centricity from their initial search. Like that's just going to be amazing. And so when you do this, you can then say like, well, which pages are we trying to, increase non-branded clicks for, or which pages drive leads or drive conversions, or which pages help us reduce the cost of support. And then you can ask like, which rich result is it eligible today, or what content do I need to get added in order to make it eligible? And then like there's often a number tied to some of these goals, right? Or you're trying to kind of break down like growth and organic clicks, like what are the different strategies we can do. Then you can tie specifically a specific goal and measurement to like, we're going to do the schema markup on the early awareness blogs, to drive not branded clicks, and we're going to be able to measure it even weekly if you want, in order to show that how that's making an impact. And I'm telling you, it works. I have a whole business based on it. The second tip I wanted to do is really kind of focus on empowering, I'll say your content writers, your content teams, depending on the type of organization you're in. Maybe it's a consultant that works with you on content, on really defining exactly what you want to see from best practices. And so here I just gave like a summary of like the FAQs. Like they are not going to read the Google documentation, right? And so how do you give them something that they can easily execute? I want 3 to 5 questions. I want links in the answers. I want some answer questions to have short answers. I want some to have long. You could even put character numbers on there if you need to give more guidance. And then I want to see it deployed in a standard FAQ component. Now, you don't have to do it in a standard FAQ component, but it does make it much easier, sort of if you're trying to do anything at scale. You can also do it as headers on a blog, sort of in what we call an unstructured tag list. But these are the type of things, because what I found is that like schema markup is absolutely truly, like most SEO things, a team sport. And if you can get those content writers to write high performing content, you can get the IT team to have a high performing website that has that common component that's like really easy for you to use, like you're going to get the visibility and the results that you need. All right. I only have 4 tips, so I got 2 more for you. So the third one is like use data to maximize performance. So great question earlier around like, should you try to do lots of rich results on a page? And my answer is like test it, right? So we often will like do first pass like on the content that's available today. I'm going to actually give you some examples of like, then we'll look at like not just how FAQ holistically is performing, but we're going to actually get down into like each URL. And if you were to think about, like those goals you have around okay, we're trying to get a conversion. Now, depending on if you're an e-commerce site for a consumer good, like maybe that's like, 2 clicks or 1 click that they're in and then they're converting. But if you're in a large enterprise, like that buying journey can cross many different pages. And what we want to be looking at is like, how are all those pages performing and how can we make them better? And it's again like getting out that scalpel, like not just doing a one and done type of approach. And that's like why sort of plugins, like to me, is like some stuff it's good, but like you need to kind of, you need to get like a little bit more competitive, like a little bit more nitty gritty in the details, like in order to get that done. And so start by going into Search Console and looking under search appearance and looking like, are you getting rich results today? How are they performing? Good start. I also like to look at like, which ones are performing, like which type, like where are you getting your clicks? Because you might find that like you have a really, really, broad range where you're getting, some clicks, but the majority of your clicks are coming from one thing. You can see here the majority of this person's clicks are coming from no rich results, lots of opportunity. And then start looking at them by like how they're performing as a group. So you can see here we're looking at a page set. We're looking specifically at the clicks, the impressions, and then I want to compare the FAQ rich result click-through rate to no rich result click-through rate. Because my goal is like, if this is a good strategy, it's converting higher. Now, this is pulled from Schema Performance Analytics, which is like part of our tool set, because we were manually calculating this to show our customers that like, yes, this is a good application. The answer isn't always yes. Like sometimes, oh, this is a bad example. Sometimes this is all red. And you have to be like, oh no, like it's not performing. And this is like real data from one of our clients. And so like when this is not performing, like when you, let's say this was sitting at 2.6 versus the, what without a, then you got to get in and say like why. So what are this is FAQs. So we might say, we actually look at like exactly what queries is it getting rewarded the FAQ? What other questions are actually being asked that this page is being, actually shown for, and then we'll work with the content teams to update it. And then we'll see if we can't move the needle there. Because if you get to a point where like you do everything and then you can get out and like really dig into each page in that conversion journey, right? Maybe you can't look at all of them, but you can look at the non-performers. Like you will get amazing results. Speaking of results, the last one I have here is just like using those metrics to drive business decisions. Like you will very clearly see sort of what's performing and how it's performing. And then my favorite conversations are in our quarterly business reviews where I get to say, great, like we're seeing this go like gangbusters. And then I ask like, how are your ads converting? Or, should we actually double down on some of these strategies to align to other goals or like align to sort of new content that's being built out. And so it becomes this really fun business conversation. And I think why I get so excited, especially for SEOs, is like you are sitting at the table, you have hard evidence as to why your work is like very important and very strategic before we even talk about knowledge graphs and AI. So that is what I had for you today. I did have 2 slides in here, a little bit about Schema app, but Casey, I'll take your take on whether you would like me to share that or not.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
We've got a captive audience. There we go.
All right.
Take a look there, folks.
I've just mentioned a couple things. I'm not going to get into a demo or anything, but so we are an end-to-end schema markup solution. We target mid to large enterprise, although we grew up, with our editor sort of doing work with SMBs. And so we do have a lot of content on there. And we're really passionate about those measurable results. And as such, we pair sort of not just our technology, but with a high touch support team. And so that's really sort of where we literally ask you how you're going to measure the outcome, and then we help you do it. We work with large brands. You can see some of the names here. I don't have any Texans listed on this list today, but there are some. I have some. I may have to go back and see if I can mention them. And we really try to go after 3 things. So we try to like do scalable, connected, semantic schema markup across any website. So we work with like every CMS. We don't care if you have multiple websites. We don't care if it's old. We don't care if it's custom built. Like we can make it work. We have tons of flexible deployment ways in order to make that happen. Our goal is also to introduce agility so that you can actually get the stuff done that you really want to get done. And so we try to have very little dependency on IT. And then the last piece is we partner you with a schema markup expert. And this is where our customer success team really works with you to implement and manage your schema markup, coaches you on best practices, and then helps you show the results, right? Because we really want to see sort of those metrics so that you can get more money to do all the things that you want to do. And so our platform, you've heard me mention a couple of things. So our editor is like more of our form. Our highlighter is really like what people love because it allows you to set it up on a group of pages. And then as things get deployed, it dynamically will update it. And then our schema performance analytics, which is like basically all the learning we've had through the hundreds of conversations around quarterly business reviews kind of put into technology. And then, like I said, we do everything from strategy through results, quarterly business reviews, you name it on the services side. I think that's all I put. Yep. So I did put together a white paper on connected schema markup. So it's at, it's a bit.ly. They updated it to be a short bit.ly. It was a really long URL before. So this bit.ly, and it just like gives you some more examples like I showed today. So if you're trying to action that, it's just a great free guide for you in order to do that. And feel free to connect with me. LinkedIn is where I spend most of my time. But feel free to connect with me, introduce yourself. Let me know any questions you have. I'm happy to help.
Fantastic. Thank you, Martha. Very, very illuminating presentation, even with the technical deficiencies. So good times. We were just so glad that, Canada was able to allow us to get more ISP allowance towards the 15 minutes in. So good times.
Like probably because the hockey game was over or something.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Whenever you have 2 hockey games going at one time, it's going to take up a lot of the availability there in the great northern winter. So that's good. But yeah, thank you so much. Did we have any questions left here? It looks like.
So I have a question for her. Yeah. I have a question. Everyone said what a great presentation you have and really great presentation, Martha. Thank you. Dynamite presentation. Thanks so much to all. My question is, it looks like you look for work, do a lot of schema for big brand. What about small business? I mean, my real question is, I have a client that sells chemicals or reclaims chemicals, and he's got 2 chemicals with 4 different what's the word I'm looking for? Combinations of, like recipes, 16-6 and so on. Yeah, recipes. So he's basically got 8 products and that's it. And so my biggest challenge is trying to get him to play in the big boy field and not be buried. I've made it so far up. he had GoDaddy and he was on page 100. I've made it so far to page 2, but I'm trying to get to page 1. So I think schema markup might do some real benefits for him. Am I right with that?
Absolutely. Like, I think it's like, especially if he does something really specific, which it sounds like he does, I think that can help. And so, yeah, so our business is primarily built on mid to large enterprise. Now, I'm happy to maybe announce, sort of not announce it, but we are working on something to bring it down market to make it more available to more and more customers. And we're like releasing a new version of our highlighter that has, I'll say, like more guided prompts, so it's more easy for you to use. We're also like thinking about how we can do tiered pricing so it becomes more accessible to more companies. So that is something we just kicked off this quarter, that working to define that and sort of make that. So maybe not in the next couple quarters, but maybe by the end of the year, we'll be able to sort of announce something there. We do have like our editor has been around for a long, long time, and it is available. So I'll make a note also to send that over to you. So we do have like a 2-week free trial, and it's $30 a month. It's really reasonable, and it has email support. So it does allow you to do all the things we've talked about. It just doesn't have, like, I'll say, like the high touch support that we find that people really need in order to get that sort of end to end value.
What about the analytics? Is that option within the highlighter or no?
The analytics today isn't in pro, but it'll be in this new offer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So and so like the editor is also a great way if you're learning how to do schema markup. It kind of forces you to do some of the semantic connections that we're doing. Oh, David, nice to see you. It also, like, there's a lot of like how-to videos that you'll unfortunately have to hear me kind of drone you through, and like how to kind of go and do that work. So that's where I would start, and then over time, like, we like the highlighter because things dynamically change. And so with the editor, like, it's still like a dynamic form you have to go update. So we're looking to kind of bring that to everybody. We also just released our like introduction to schema markup training. So it's free training. We're going to give away a lot of training this year. I'm like so excited. I have like sort of a dream of like, can we enable the world to do semantic schema markup, and can we teach them all how to do it? So we just released our first version of that training, and yeah, it's been getting really, really great reviews. So I'm happy to share that as well. Kind of building on, or I'll say like, short videos that you can watch that sort of allow you to do that. And we'll probably be pulling out a certification at some point on people sort of who are trained in this space.
Well, that's some exciting news. I'm excited to hear that. Very excited.
Yeah, first here, my team. I'm looking behind me. I'm like, oh man, my team's gonna be like, you told them already?
Well, you're the first to know, my friends. You are the first to know. So that's very exciting, because I think that's where we struggle in a lot of small businesses.
Yeah, I hear you.
Is learning how to do the schema and not getting it right, or doing schema and it's bad. I've seen some bad schema and I've seen some good schema. And the previous company I worked at, somebody knew how to do it. So they are still being rewarded. But, I didn't learn all that back then. I let them do it. So now I'm eager to learn, and I'm excited that you're going to come out with something like that.
Awesome. Well, I'll be at State of Search. So we're sponsoring, and we'll be there ready to kind of tell everyone and teach everyone. And we'll have some more training out by then too. So lots of stuff that we'll be announcing in November.
Yay. It's exciting. Do we have any more questions?
Yes, David asked, will you be at the conversion conference in Vegas in June?
No, so I don't, but I'll check it out, David. So thanks for mentioning it. So yeah, if there's conferences that you go to that you think are interesting that me or my team should be at, just let me know. We are sort of like, I'll say, back out. Kind of PubCon was sort of kind of getting back out there. I'm speaking at Minnesota Search in June.
Yeah, Search Summit. Fantastic.
Yeah, so I'll be in Minnesota with the other Northerners.
There you go.
Awesome.
Yeah, like Tim was pointing out,
certifications
are big.
Oh, go ahead,
certifications are big sellers. People want to get those, like Tim was mentioning there.
Yeah, I'm excited. For us, it's like there's so many things we want to do, and we're not a giant team, but we're making slow and steady progress. So we'll keep innovating, and like I said, we're on sort of a mission to really enable everyone to do it.
Do you know? I've got one last question. Do you know if like ChatGPT or any generative AI is using the schema itself?
It is.
It is.
Yeah. so my co-founder Mark has been spending quite a bit of time sort of just digging in and sort of seeing sort of how, like, what it's learning and how it's pulling the information. And it's pretty good at consuming the JSON-LD off the site. But it's interesting because, like, the version it had was old. So it was pulling from, so there's like Common Crawl. So it was pulling like some of the schema from the Common Crawl data source versus like actually going through the sites. And so it was pretty out of date because Common Crawl only happens once a year. And so it'll be like, we'll keep watching to see like when is it dynamically, but you can like actually give it the JSON-LD and then ask it questions. And so so there's which kind of proves our point, right? Like it's sort of like it understands it. I think what will be interesting is like, so actually tomorrow we're doing a webinar like where I have the data scientists, like we're getting into some of the weeds around generative AI. Is, like, how do we have a control point on like who's consuming it? Because there's going to be some interesting dynamics on, like Chat GPT can't crawl Bard stuff, and like they're going to like want to sort of have different data sets. And I don't know, like I like to think like the actual company should own and like tell who can use it. And so this is going to be like an interesting dynamic in how today we give Google a lot, right, about our content, about what we're doing, and how that might change because, if Google is not the only consumer, right, because that experience is being had through these different, I'll say like AI enabled kind of experiences, and that's going to happen across like many different platforms. Like, who do you want to know about all your data, and which ones are important to your consumers, and how are they going to cross over? So that's what I get to talk about tomorrow. But I'm just the host because I have a data scientist, and again, Mark, my co-founder and our head of products, can be talking.
And that sounds awesome.
Yeah. So it's we're talking about schema markup and AI. So like we're going to talk about sort of like how we see those two things playing out. I'm excited because like we've had this so when you use Schema app, we actually like build a knowledge graph. Like we actually store your stuff in what's called an ontology, and you own your data. We're big believers that if you pay us to generate it, like you should own that data. So we can give everyone an ontology today of their schema markup. Like we have it out of the box, because of how we've built things. And like that's actually a pretty powerful data set now. Now that everyone's like trying to chain their AI. So we're kind of excited. Again, SEOs are going to be the hero, as you sort of like can accelerate organizations work on this.
And
wow.
How about that? How about that for my final statement? Like, and
that's mind blowing.
Like we've had a hypothesis on this for a long time, but like I think there's very strong evidence that that's indeed gonna.
I'm still trying to get bacon to be a known entity whenever my name comes up, and so I'm still working on the semantic relationships with that. So I'm gonna have to pick your brain.
Just like start a bacon site, like a bacon
I have to
company,
start.
right?
I've got well, the food blogs are doing it. I've just told them to start linking to me every time they publish a recipe that has bacon in it, and that might do it. So we get some kind of a collusional relationship there. Will be good.
Yeah, there's a question around first and third party data. I'm not as familiar with SQLite. I do know like SQL databases. Like I literally was on the train to Toronto today talking to another founder about this. Like the biggest difference around like how you do semantic technology and sort of is like when you define the relationships between data, how you like I'm going to use the word, the schema of the database doesn't exist because you're instead defining what things are based on the relationships. And so it becomes this like very, very, very dynamic, elastic kind of like data source. And that's actually why we build things that way, because that's my co-founder's like way of looking at the world. But yeah, well, I'm not sure about SQLite, like how that plays in, but like that's how it's very different from SQL and sort of what makes it really powerful.
All right. On that note, Martha, we don't want to keep you too long. Really appreciate you taking that time to dump the tremendous amount of knowledge you did on us tonight. So we really appreciate that. Very nice presentation. And we're looking forward to seeing you in November at State of Search. Thank you.
Let's do it. It's going to be fun.
Let's do it. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. We sure appreciate it. And we are ending the stream. Have a great